Happy 4 years to the Nintendo Switch Lite. September 20th, 2019 is the initial launch of the Nintendo Switch Lite, 3 years after which the OG Nintendo Switch came out. The focus on this guy is to essentially take the existing Nintendo Switch and pretty much downscale this guy, make this focused on handheld only, take care of like all the nooks and crannies of like what they did for this hybrid approach and just made it specifically portable, cutting down all the prices down to make it a $200 price point to enter into the Nintendo Switch ecosystem. 3 different colors came out with this guy upon the release date. That was turquoise, gray, yellow, and then later on we would get blue and then coral, and then further down the line we would get different special edition Nintendo Switch Lites, mainly on the Pokemon side, but there's probably some other ones that are kind of more obscure. We should probably go through like the pros and cons, right? This guy will play almost every single Nintendo Switch game that's currently in the Switch library. The only exceptions are ones that are specifically tailor-made for IR scanning or Pacific Joy-Con use. So pretty much because these guys are one whole unit, you can't detach it, you can't really use it the same way as you would for like Nintendo Switch Sports, for example. I always say it, but because of the fact of like the ergonomics and the build for the Nintendo Switch, because it has 2 detachable Joy-Cons, the weight is actually on the center console and not necessarily these guys, which can make for some uncomfortable like game playing after a little bit of time. Although I guess it's fine if you're just like playing it like this. Typically for me, I'm usually like on the bed over there and I just have it like this, and it's just like that's a me thing. But because of the fact that the Switch Lite has everything as one central unit, you don't really feel that. Another thing about this guy, soft buttons. D-pad, it's also pretty soft too. Because it is just a Nintendo Switch, it also has access to Nintendo Switch Online. So as long as you have like family plan with that, you can include people who have a Switch Lite and just play through the different libraries from like NES, SNES, Game Boy, was it the expansion pass? And since this guy is just a one whole unit, no fuss, I think I find it a little bit more approachable when it comes to playing through like NSO stuff. Well, I mean, ultimately they play the exact same. The only problem is that this guy doesn't have a kickstand like the other Nintendo Switch family members do. Knock it all you want about this kickstand, it gets the job done. Oh yeah, the battery life. My experience with the battery life is that it dissipates much more quickly with the Switch Lite than any of the other Switch consoles that I have. So this guy ends up dying a lot. You do lose access to the higher resolution if you're playing handheld, but if you don't really care about that and you just would rather just play this like upon pickup, then anywhere you go, this is definitely worth considering as well. You know what's interesting is the fact that it is focused on portability, right? That's one of the marketing things about the Nintendo Switch Lite. But the weird thing is that the Nintendo Switch, like by itself, is capable of portability. It's kind of why it was developed the way it was. But I understand as well that making the Nintendo Switch much cheaper and much more approachable for anybody as far as like how you want to play like your games, in this case more portably, that they decided to go with the decision of making it smaller, much lighter. By the process of it just being smaller, easier to just kind of like carry around. It is much lighter, like much lighter than the original Nintendo Switch. I don't actually have a scale for it, but it's definitely comfortable just to like pick up. This one will just have a little bit of heft to it. Otherwise, it has most of the same features. Touchscreen's still there. It is missing the rumble feature, so that's also been cut away from it. I believe it also still has like gyroscope, so don't need to worry about that. We're at this point in the video where a lot of people ask themselves, especially when they make a Nintendo Switch Lite video these days, is it worth it? Why would you get it? Obviously, if you're a big collector of like Nintendo like hardware, this is definitely like a must. I wouldn't go crazy as to getting every single color, but you could totally do that. It's also super recommended if you're just looking for a cheap way to get into the ecosystem of Nintendo Switch, or if you're gifting this to a family member who doesn't really care for, you know, dock gaming and would rather just kind of have this as a little small unit by itself, then yeah, absolutely. Personally, I do love the versatility of the OG Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo Switch OLED. I am liking the OLED just a little bit more. That screen's a lot nicer to look at when you're playing handheld, for sure. For how I would carry a Nintendo Switch with me here and there, I don't really carry it a lot, but when I do, it's still not much of an issue carrying like a Nintendo Switch OG or OLED versus carrying this guy. I don't think there's much of a difference for me traveling with either or. Because of how Nintendo is focused on, you know, it's really just one console per profile, essentially. If you have multiple Nintendo Switch consoles and you have one that's like set up as the main console, every other console will always have to be verified to determine whether or not they can actually play whatever software has been downloaded. Which, you know, if you don't have the greatest like connection at a certain point in your house, that can kind of suck. But yeah, so Nintendo Switch Lite, 4 years. 4 years with this guy. Next year is gonna be 5, and there's a possibility that Nintendo Switch is at the end of its life cycle by 2024. So we might hear some news about a brand new like console down the line, and at that point it'll be the end of the line for Nintendo Switch Lite, the OLED, the OG, all of them. And it's crazy because Nintendo Switch has like a crazy large library, and a lot of them can be played through this guy right here. But yeah, guys, that's gonna be pretty much it for me. I just wanted to give a good old happy birthday to the Nintendo Switch Lite. And Nintendo Switch has been my favorite console out of like the 3. It has so many games that it's like available on that platform. Well, I know that there's some games that play not as well on Nintendo Switch. I think Mortal Kombat 1 is like the biggest example during this time, but there's definitely been games where like you're sacrificing quite a lot as far as the visual like fidelity, or you know, the frame rates, over just having that ability to play it portably. But whether that's going to be the same thing in going forward with like the next like bit of hardware, that remains to be seen. But for now, we'll go ahead and call it here. Appreciate everyone for tuning in, and if you would, please subscribe to the Tanuki channel. We got more stuff ahead of us, so be sure to hit that subscribe button just so you guys are notified for the next video that shows up on your feed. Appreciate everyone, guys, again for tuning in. I hope to see you guys in the next one. Take care of yourselves, everybody.